Hey, Facebook, how you doing? It is Tuesday already. Can't believe September is wrapping up here. What is today? September 17th already. Midway through September. It is hotter than Hades here in Tennessee. Anyway, it's actually a little bit annoying. How many of you feel that September should be considered fall, even though it's technically most of it's still summer? September 21st, fall starts. Can't wait. So I wanted to talk to you today about antibiotics and depression. All right. Can antibiotics cause depression and mental disorders? So here's the statistics. Here's the actual facts on this. Okay. Is you have if you take one course of antibiotics in a 12-month time period, you have a 25% increased risk of dealing with depression, of developing depression. 25% increased risk of dealing with depression if you take one course of antibiotics. That number goes up to 60% if you take two courses of antibiotics within a year. Two courses of antibiotics in a year, 60%. Now, some of you are like, oh my gosh, every time I get a bladder infection, I have to take antibiotic. Some of you are on lots of antibiotics over time. And some of you are like, look, I'm depressed, but I'm not taking any antibiotics. I haven't taken any in a long time. Well, I have news for you. There's almost no way to avoid antibiotics anymore because glyphosate, Roundup, the product made by Monsanto, is technically an antibiotic, and it's in our food supply. It's almost impossible to avoid antibiotics in our diet anymore. So now, what does that have to do with depression? Okay, so we can readily assume that that most people are going to be exposed to some level of antibiotics over the course. I mean, let's face it, you're eating food produced in America. Pretty good chance that glyphosate or an antibiotic is going to be in your food supply on a daily basis, depending on how you're eating, where you're getting your food from, whether it's truly organic and kept away from all these pesticides and other antibiotics that are given to our meats and animals that we consume. So let's assume you are having it. Why does that make you depressed? So somewhere, depending on who you read, 60 to 80% of about 60% of the physical immune system exists in your intestines, and about 80% of the function of your immune system exists in your gut. Now, the bacteria that live in your gut, and hi Lisa, how are you today? Your gut houses and contains more nerves than any other part of your body outside of your brain. All right. So there are more nerves in your intestines than anywhere else. On top of that, the bacteria in your gut are responsible for the production of much of your neurotransmitters, the little chemical messengers that help your brain and your nerves fire, these little chemical messengers that keep you happy. Serotonin, dopamine, GABA, acetylcholine. These are our neurotransmitters, and these neurotransmitters, much of it, about 95% of the serotonin made in your body is made in your gut. So if your bacteria in your intestines get destroyed through antibiotics, guess what happens to our serotonin levels that affect our intestines and our brain? That's right, they go in the toilet. So I think we can readily see that we have a more stressed and depressed society than any other. Hi, Edna. Lisa, I'm glad you're doing well. We have a more stressed, more depressed, more mental disorders in society now than any other time in history. And we have these school shootings, we have these mass shootings that are occurring. You go, how is it that people are developing all these mental disorders? Folks, a lot of it, believe it or not, you can throw this out if you'd like to and say it couldn't be possibly that a component to it, but our diets have a big impact on how our brain functions. Actually, I'm going to look this up on my phone here real quick. I have it right here. Just going to give you some statistics here on autism as an example, right? So in 1975, 1 in 5,000 children had autism. Today, it's 1 out of 36. So in 1975, 1 out of 5,000 had autism. Today, it's 1 out of 36. It's the fastest acceleration of autism has happened between 2012 and today. At the current rates, we're going to see 1/3 of our children with autism. And the best neurologists and the natural psychiatrists, the one that aren't just trying to throw pills at you, are going to tell you that the reason for that is going to be chemicals in our diet and in our medications, in our food supply, things along those lines. So what happens is these chemicals have an impact on our gut balance. They have an impact on our DNA, our what's called our messenger RNA. Actually, I'm going to edit my post at the top, which says RA antibiotics causing your depression and mental issues. I'm going to edit that, and I'm going to put a link to an article from Dr. Zach Bush, I think his last name is, and that gives you a lot of these statistics, because I don't want to bore you with it. But if you want to read that article on how important it is to have a clean diet and avoid antibiotics at all costs. Now, I'm not saying if you had a MRSA or a staph infection that you should never take an antibiotic. Just understand that every time you take an antibiotic, you are truly interrupting the function of your gut, you're interrupting the function of your nervous system. You're interrupting the function of your DNA. You're interrupting the function of the bacteria, the DNA that are in the bacteria that are housed in your intestines. It really, really, really upsets the entire apple cart every time we take an antibiotic. And we're being bombarded with antibiotics right and left in our food supply. The cattle that we eat, beef, some of you might be vegetarians and you're watching this, but the cattle that we eat, most of them are pumped full of antibiotics. The dairy that we consume from the dairy cows, they're pumped full of antibiotics. The chickens that we eat are pumped full of antibiotics. And even in the fish farms now, they're putting antibiotics in the water supply to keep the diseases down in these fish farms and these seafood farms, to keep their supply, quote unquote, healthy, and it's killing us. So just to recap here, can antibiotics cause your depression? Yes, and antibiotics are such things as the antibiotics in our food supply. They're antibiotics that we take for infections, and they're the things that are sprayed on our crops, Roundup and glyphosate and all these things. They are technically antibiotics. Again, I'm going to put the link in the description, in the title of the video, so you guys can read some of this information for yourself. I'll say, Lisa, you said antibiotics don't work for me now, even for a simple ear infection plus fibromyalgia. Yeah, we become resistant to antibiotics because anyway, I can go on and on, but you really want to do everything you can to avoid antibiotics unless it's a dire situation that you really absolutely, it's going to be a life threatening situation. You want to give your body a chance when possible. Not giving you medical advice here over the internet. That would be wrong and unethical. But if you want to give your body a chance, you want to make sure you're staying happy and healthy mentally and spiritually. You don't want to develop depression, anxiety, any psychosis, any diagnosable mental issues that doctors are just going to prescribe you more medications for. If you want to avoid those things, check your diet, check your food supply for things like glyphosate. Avoid the antibiotics. If your children are suffering with ADD, ADHD, if they've got autism, if they've got any diagnosable or undiagnosable mental disorder, my children, my two daughters go practically bonkers if they consume red food dyes. So guess what they're not allowed to have. Now my daughter's 9 and 12 now. I better not forget birthday, right? 9 and 12. And they know that they need to avoid toxins when possible in their diet. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did find this helpful, if you could do me a favor, as always, hit the like buttons down there. Give me some hearts. And more importantly than those little hearts and thumbs up is to share this with anybody who might find this information helpful. We're trying to change healthcare here. You cannot do it it by just medicating these problems away. I hope you found that I hope you found this helpful. If you did, again, give me those likes and thumbs up and hit that share button. I really appreciate it. And we will see you next time. Bye now.